Maya Johnson woke up before sunrise, her heart dancing with joy. Today was special. She'd earned first place at the regional science fair, and her father had invited her to ride with him on his company's private jet. She dressed in her favorite light blue dress, the one with tiny white stars that always made her feel hopeful. In the mirror, she smoothed a strand of hair and smiled at her reflection. Her brown eyes shone bright. She thought of the model rocket she had built, the way it had soared higher than all the others. That memory made her grin, felt like magic. Downstairs, her mother placed a plate of warm pancakes on the table. Steam curled up in the early light. Maya sat and ate each bite as though it were a reward, savoring the sweetness of the syrup. Her little brother Jamal peeked at her plate and offered to share his bacon. She laughed and let him have a strip. Their mother winked at Maya and said, "Go show them what you can do." Maya nodded, feeling a wave of pride. She knew her family believed in her. She wanted to make them proud. At the Johnson driveway, the black SUV rolled to a stop. Michael Johnson stepped out in a crisp suit, his dark hair neatly combed. He smiled at Maya, his face softening, lifted her suitcase into the back, and opened the door for her. "Ready for the big trip?" he asked. Maya nodded and climbed inside. The SUV glided through quiet streets. Streetlights winked off one by one. As the sun climbed, Maya watched the sky turn orange and pink. She felt excitement buzz in her chest. At the private airfield, workers in bright jackets guided them to a sleek jet. Its polished silver body gleamed in the morning light. Maya's father walked beside her as she placed her hand on the cool metal. She thought of all the places she could travel one day. Maybe she would build rockets that carried people or satellites. Today, though, she was just happy to be here with her father. He paused and patted her shoulder. "Let's go see your seat," he said. Maya followed him up the stairs and into the cabin. Inside, the jet felt calm and quiet. Soft lighting glowed overhead. Plush seats lined the aisle, but in the front section was a cluster of larger seats, the VIP area. Only family in the top. Executives of his company used those seats. Maya had sat there before. She loved the wide windows that showed the clouds so close they looked like soft pillows. She walked over and ran her hand along the leather armrest. It smelled faintly of fresh polish and promise. Her father nodded and stepped back to let her choose her favorite spot. She picked the window seat on the left, the one with a little panel that let her adjust the shade. She clicked it open and looked out. Through the window, the runway stretched out, free of other planes. In the distance, the city's tall buildings glinted in the sun. Maya hugged her knees and felt the gentle hum of the plane's engines coming. To life, she had ridden small planes for school trips, but this was different. This plane belonged to her father's company, a machine built for comfort and speed. It felt like a special chariot carrying her dreams. She tapped her fingers on her knee and imagined the profiles of faraway mountains or ocean waves she might see from up here. The flight attendant greeted them with a warm smile. She handed Maya a tablet filled with news about the science fair, pictures of her rocket launch, and messages from proud teachers. Maya thanked her politely. The attendant's uniform was neat and her shoes clicked softly on the carpet. She seemed kind and Maya felt safe. Her father settled into his seat across the aisle and put on his headset, pressed a button, and spoke quietly to someone on the ground. Maya did not catch every word, but she saw his face light up when he heard the reply. She felt proud that her presence here was part of something larger. As the jet pushed back from the gate, Maya's stomach fluttered with delight. She watched the ground fall away and the trees and cars shrink. Soon, they rose above the clouds. The cabin lights dimmed and gentle music whispered through the speakers. Maya unbuckled her seatbelt and leaned back. She held the tablet on her lap and scrolled through the pictures of her rocket. Each photo reminded her of long afternoons in the garage, working with glue and paint, learning from every mistake. Her father had come by to help, steadying the body of the rocket while she attached the fins. That memory made her smile again. She looked around the VIP cabin. The seats formed a small circle. There was room for laughter and quiet talk. A small table in the center held a tray of fresh fruit and cold water. The cabin air smelled faintly of lemon and new leather. Maya felt a wave of calm. She pressed a finger to the window and watched the clouds drift by. Some looked like sheep, others like castles. She whispered their shapes to herself. She had always loved clouds. It reminded her of stories of journeys and freedom. Her father leaned toward her and asked, "How does it feel up here?" Maya grinned and said, "Like I can touch the sky." He nodded, as if he understood perfectly. He asked about the next step in her science fair work. Maya told him she wanted to try making a weather balloon rocket next. She spoke with bright eyes and clear words. Every time she shared her plan, her father listened and asked questions. He treated her like a scientist, not just his little girl. Maya felt proud. She knew he believed in her. The flight attendant returned with 2 steaming mugs of hot chocolate, topped with whipped cream. She placed one in front of Maya and one in front of her father. Maya thanked her again, marveling at the smell of cocoa. She took a slow sip and felt warmth spread through her hands. The creamy sweetness was like a treat for her hard work. She looked down at the tops of clouds glowing gold in the afternoon sun. In that moment, she felt happy, safe, and free as the plane flew steadily. Maya opened the tablet's message from her science teacher. It said, "Congratulations, Maya. You inspire us all." Her chest swelled. She touched the screen and scrolled through more notes from classmates who had cheered for her. She felt connected to each one like a chain of support stretching across miles. She thought of the long hours in the lab, the setbacks when a fin broke, the triumph when the rocket took flight. All of it had led to this moment, sitting in a private jet, watching the sky. Maya leaned her head back against the seat and let her eyes close for just a moment. She breathed in deeply, savoring the soft hum of engines and the gentle movement of the plane. Her father reached over and squeezed her hand. Maya opened her eyes and smiled at him. She knew he was right. This trip was a reward, but also a promise that she could do anything she set her mind to. She felt proud, excited, and ready for what lay ahead. Below them, the world rolled by cities, fields, rivers, all tiny and peaceful. Maya thought of the journey home and of telling her friends about the flight. She imagined them wide-eyed, hearing every detail. She knew this memory would stay with her. She opened the tablet again and drafted a message to her science club. "You'll never believe where I'm flying right now." She paused, feeling a giggle rise. She tapped send. And as the sun sank low in the sky, painting the clouds pink, Maya settled in to enjoy the rest of the flight, dreaming of rockets, stars, and the endless sky. Maya felt the gentle sway of the jet as it soared above the clouds. She studied the patterns on the ceiling, where soft lights formed circles that seemed to spin slowly. Her fingers traced the edge of her seat, and she smiled, still tasting the hot chocolate. She loved how this cabin felt like a small world of its own, a quiet place far from everything below. A few moments later, the flight attendant came back with a cart of snacks. She offered colorful macarons, fresh berries, and tiny sandwiches. Maya picked a strawberry and bit into its sweet flesh. The berry was cool and juicy. She held the macaron between her thumb and finger, admiring its neat shell. The attendant asked if she wanted anything else. Maya shook her head and said, "No, thank you." The attendant smiled and moved on to the next seat. Maya put her snack on the fold-out table and leaned back, looking out at the endless sky. She thought about how safe she felt here. There was the sound of soft music, the hum of engines, and the gentle air. None of it felt rushed. She liked to imagine that time slowed down when you flew in a private jet. Down below, people hurried through busy cities, but up here, things moved at their own calm pace. Just then, Maya noticed movement at the front of the cabin. A different flight attendant stood near the VIP section, speaking quietly on a small radio. Her face was calm, but her eyes flicked toward Maya's seat. Maya watched as the attendant took a small notepad from her pocket. Maya wondered if she had asked for more drinks for another passenger, or if there was a delay ahead. The attendant walked toward Maya with perfect poise. Her uniform was neat, and her badge gleamed in the cabin light. Maya straightened and watched her come closer. The attendant's voice was soft but firm when she said, Miss Johnson, may I have a word? Maya's heart flickered. She nodded and said yes. The attendant motioned to the seat beside Maya and asked her to move there. Maya frowned. Why should I move? She asked, her voice calm but curious. The attendant looked down at her notepad and said, There is a last minute. Guess who needs your seat? We need you to give up this seat and take the one next to it. Maya's mind raced. Her seat here had the best view and the most space. The seat beside it was smaller and closer to the aisle where people walked by. Who is this guest? Maya asked, trying to keep her voice steady. The attendant hesitated a moment, then said, He is a valued commercial passenger. He booked an economy, but needs the VIP seat now. Maya's eyes widened. She knew this jet was for her father's use. She had been told by the crew that these seats were for family and important executives only. Would a commercial ticket let someone take her place? She looked up and saw the attendant's calm face. It felt like she was asking for something that did not belong to her. Maya's chest tightened. She felt a heat spread across her cheeks, part surprise and part hurt. She said, I don't understand. My family and my father's team always sit here. This seat is mine. The attendant bit her lip. She said again, I am so sorry, Miss Johnson, but the airline policy says we must accommodate this passenger. Maya's hands gripped the armrests. She could feel the leather under her palms. She glanced at her father across the aisle. He was talking quietly into his headset, unaware of the exchange. Maya felt a wave of panic. She expected to give up her special seat for someone who bought a regular ticket. She thought of her science fair photos of her family celebrating her win. She pressed her lips together and straightened her shoulders. I'm sorry, the attendant said, her voice low. I can give you more snacks, an extra pillow, or anything you like in the back section, but we need this seat for him. Heart felt heavy. She wanted to protest, to demand that they respect her place here. But she also knew the attendant would not argue. She would simply step away and walk back to the front. Maya would end up in a narrower seat, far from the windows. Tears prickled her eyes. She blinked them back. She thought of the moment she had waited for all her life, a simple reward for her hard work, a moment of pride above the clouds. Now someone else's name on a ticket threatened to take it away. Maya's voice was quiet but firm as she said, This seat belongs to me. The attendant's shoulders slumped. She looked torn, then she said, I'm sorry, Miss Johnson, but I have orders. She turned and walked away. Maya watched the attendant go. She could feel her pulse thumping in her neck. She looked again at her father, still speaking. She wanted to call out to him, but she also felt too small to break his focus. She stared at her lap and held back tears. The cabin felt suddenly colder, less friendly. She heard the soft click of a door as the attendant returned, guiding a man in a dark suit toward her seat. He was tall and wore polished shoes that clicked on the carpet. He smiled at Maya as he passed, not looking at her eyes but at her empty seat, as if it were his by right. Maya watched him sit down, adjusting his tie, pulling down the window shade. He made himself comfortable without a word to Maya. She sat there, silent as he took her place. A pit formed in Maya's stomach. She shifted uncomfortably. The seat next to her held the snacks she had not eaten. She glanced at her father again. He still had not noticed what happened. Her chest tightened more. How could they treat her like this? Like she did not matter? She had worked so hard for her dream. Felt like someone wiped her dream away in a single moment. Maya pressed her lips together. She took a steady breath. She thought, I can't let this go. She uncrossed her legs and reached for her tablet. Her trembling fingers searched for her father's assistant's name. She tapped the screen. A small voice inside told her to stay calm. She tried to slow her breathing. She thought of her mother's words. Speak up when something is wrong. She tapped again. The cabin lights dimmed as the sun moved lower. Outside, the sky turned soft pink. Maya clenched her jaw. She copied her father's assistant's contact. She typed a short message. Dad, I need your help. Her fingers hovered. She wanted someone to see that she was treated unfairly. She pressed send. Then she waited, staring at the small screen as if it would solve everything. The plane continued to glide above the clouds. The soft hum was now a reminder of how far away she felt. She watched the man in the seat smile at his phone, oblivious to Maya's pain. She shut her eyes for a moment. She thought of the rocket and all her late nights in the garage. She thought of how proud she had been this morning. She felt that. Pride rekindle, tiny but bright. Maya opened her eyes and sat up straight. She would not let this moment define her. She would find a way to tell her father. She would show them that respect cannot be bought with a ticket. As the man tapped away on his phone, Maya reached for her own. She tapped again, waiting for a reply. The cabin seemed quieter now, and Maya felt a new warmth in her chest, a small fire of determination. And as the plane flew on toward Los Angeles, Maya held her head high, ready to speak up and demand what was fair and right. Maya stared at her phone as the little dots danced across the screen, showing that someone was typing a reply. The cabin felt quiet and still, but inside her chest, her heart pounded like a drum. She had sent a message to her father's assistant. "Dad, I need your help." She watched the dots blink and vanish, then reappear. Her breathing grew shallow with each blink. She thought of switching seats back by force, but she knew that would only make things worse. She needed her father's voice. She tapped the call button and held the phone to her ear. On the other end, a calm voice answered, "Good afternoon. Miss Johnson, I have your father on the line. Please hold." Maya waited, her stomach twisting in knots. Around her, the jet hummed along smoothly. She tried to steady her breathing. She imagined her father walking out of his meeting room, eyes wide when he heard her voice. A low click sounded, and suddenly Michael Johnson's warm yet firm voice came through. "Maya, are you all right?" He sounded surprised, as if he had been planning something else and then everything changed. Maya felt a lump in her throat. She looked over at the aisle, half expecting to see him standing there. Instead, he spoke clearly into her ear. "Tell me what happened." His tone was soft, but carried the weight of a question that needed an answer. Maya swallowed. She looked at the man sitting in her seat, reading emails on his tablet. She thought of the attendant who had asked her to move, and how her world had cracked in a single moment. She pressed the phone harder to her ear and spoke. In a voice that trembled only a little, "Dad, I was sitting in the VIP seat, my seat. Then the crew asked me to give it up. They said a commercial passenger needed it. I had to move." She took a breath. It felt wrong. I felt hurt. There was a pause. Maya could almost hear the meeting room falling silent on the other end. Then her father's voice returned, stronger now. "No one has the right to treat you like that? No one? Give me one moment." He spoke again into the phone in a low tone. And Maya could hear muffled voices, her father speaking quickly, someone else responding. Her pulse raced as she realized he was calling the airline. "CEO." A soft chime sounded. And then Maya heard a new voice crackle through her speaker, a formal voice that sounded stiff and nervous. "Mr. Johnson, this is Alan Pierce, CEO of Skylink Airlines. I understand there is an issue on your flight." The words felt heavy in her ear. Alan Pierce's voice wavered just enough to show he was caught off guard. Michael Johnson's reply was calm but firm. "Yes, Mr. Pierce. My daughter Maya was asked to leave her VIP seat for a commercial passenger. On my company's jet, on a flight I arranged. I want to know how this happened." His tone left no room for excuses. Maya felt a rush of pride. She curled her fingers around the phone, feeling her father's power through the tiny device. Hesitated. Maya could hear papers shuffling. "Mr. Johnson, I apologize. Our standard policy does allow upgrades in some cases, but I did not think this would apply to your family's flight." He paused, clearing his throat. "I will investigate immediately." His voice sounded small compared to her father's. Michael Johnson leaned forward, his voice still calm, but carrying a quiet threat. "You will investigate while we are still in the air. I want the crew members involved to explain themselves. And I want a formal apology to my daughter before we land." Maya felt the cabin tilt slightly as the plane banked, but she held still. She listened as her father spoke with authority. Alan Pierce swallowed and replied, Yes, sir. I will handle it personally. There was a crackle, and Maya thought she heard Michael ask, "Do you understand?" Alan answered quickly, "Yes, Mr. Johnson. I understand fully." Maya let out a breath she did not know she had been holding. She felt a warmth spread through her chest, like a candle flame chasing away the cold of fear. Her father's voice came back, softer now that the battle lines were drawn. "Maya, you did the right thing. I'm sorry this happened to you." Maya pressed her lips together and nodded, even though he could not see her. "Thank you, Dad." Her voice was small but steady. She felt tears come, but they were the good kind. They were tears of relief. The call ended with Michael promising to follow up once they landed. Maya stayed on the line for a few seconds, listening to the cabin hum and the neighbor's quiet tapping on a keyboard. Then she hung up and tucked the phone into her pocket. She sat back in her smaller seat, feeling a new sense of calm and hope. She thought of her father fighting for her, just as she had learned to fight for her dreams. A few minutes later, the flight attendant who had asked Maya to move approached. Again. This time, she did not look away from Maya's eyes. Instead, she paused in the aisle and said, "Miss Johnson, I have instructions. You may return to your original seat. We apologize for the inconvenience." Maya felt her heart swell. She smiled and stood, gathering her tablet, her snack plate, and her courage. She walked back to the VIP section and sat in her old seat, her father's promise echoing in her mind. The attendant offered Maya a fresh drink and a gentle smile. Took it and nodded, feeling the respect she deserved. The man who had taken her seat had moved on and now sat quietly in his own space, looking contrite. Maya watched him for a moment but chose not to look away from the window. She pressed the shade open and gazed at the cotton-white clouds below, thinking of how her world had shifted and then righted itself again. Her father smiled at her from across the aisle, his eyes full of pride. He gave her a thumbs up, and Maya returned it. She felt lighter now, as if the seat itself held a new meaning. It was more than leather and windows. It was a place where she belonged, where her worth was clear. She leaned back, took a sip of her drink, and watched the sky. For the rest of the flight, Maya sat tall and spoke only when spoken to. She felt a new strength inside her, a spark that came from knowing she did not have to wait for kindness. She saw that people could do the right thing when someone in power spoke up, and she felt that one small call could change more than just a seat on a plane, could change how people saw her and how she saw herself. As the jet soared on toward its destination, Maya closed her eyes for a moment and let the hum of the engines wash over her. She felt proud and ready for whatever came next. She knew that this journey was more than a trip in a private jet. It was a lesson in standing up, speaking out, and believing that respect must be earned and cannot be taken away. Damn. And in that moment, as the clouds drifted beneath her, Maya felt that nothing could stop her dream from rising. It's just like her rocket, straight into the sky. The jet landed smoothly on the Los Angeles runway just as the sun dipped low in the sky. Maya unbuckled her seatbelt and felt a rush of relief that the flight was over. She glanced around the VIP cabin at the plush seats, now empty except for her and her father. Outside the window, workers guided the aircraft toward its hangar. As other passengers disembarked, Maya stayed seated while her father gathered his briefcase. He leaned down and spoke quietly into her ear. "Let's wait a moment," he said, nodding toward the cockpit door. Maya pressed her lips together. She still felt the echo of what had happened in her chest, but she also felt proud that her father had stood up for her. Not long after, the door to the cabin opened, and two men in dark suits stepped inside. One held a folder, the other a tablet. They approached Michael Johnson and asked if they could have a word. Maya watched as her father and the men slipped back into the galley area. She felt a thrill of curiosity. She peeked around the corner and saw one of the men tap his tablet. "Yes," her father said, his voice steady. "I expect a full report on that crew's behavior." Maya could not hear the whole conversation, but she sensed the stern tone in her father's words. A moment later, he turned and smiled at Maya. "All set," he said. "Let's go." They stood, and Maya followed him down the narrow aisle. As she passed the man who had taken her seat, she held his gaze just long enough for him to look away. He looked uneasy, and Maya felt a strange mix of pity and triumph. Outside on the tarmac, Maya saw two flight attendants standing by a small shuttle that would take them to the terminal. One of them was the attendant who had first asked Maya to move. The woman's eyes widened when she saw Michael Johnson, looked at the ground, then spoke in a low voice to her colleague. The other attendant shook her head and glanced at Maya. Maya folded her arms, but did not speak. A few steps later, Maya's father paused and said, "Maya, I need you to wait here for just a moment." He guided her toward a set of stairs leading up to a raised platform. Below, he approached the head of operations for Skylink Airlines, Alan Pierce himself. Alan stood next to two human resources managers. They wore badges that glittered in the late light. Maya's father spoke quietly, and Alan's face grew red. Maya heard her father say these crew members violated basic respect for passengers. "I insist you take action." Alan swallowed and nodded. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small card, then held it out to her father. She recognized it as his business card. "You have my word, Mr. Johnson," Alan said. "This will be handled today." Michael Johnson looked at his daughter and then at Alan. He said, "We appreciate that." Alan clapped his hands once and turned to the HR managers. "Take them now," he said. I watched as the two HR managers moved toward the attendants. She saw their mouths open, but no words came. One attendant's hand went to her chest, and she looked down at the ground. The other flinched when she saw the managers approaching. Maya wanted to say something, but her father placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. Soon the attendants were guided into a nearby office. Maya could see them through the glass walls. The HR manager spoke to them in low tones, pointing to papers. And then 2 badges. The attendants looked at each other, their faces pale. One of them quietly unbuttoned her uniform jacket, and the other set down the small bag she carried. A hush fell over the tarmac. Maya turned to her father. He said, "They will be dismissed from your flight crew immediately, with full notice of termination. Skylink will also issue a public apology." Maya's eyes widened. She felt a strange flutter in her stomach. She had never seen anyone lose a job before. The next morning, Maya sat at the breakfast table in her father's home, scrolling through the news on her tablet. She saw the Skylink Airlines website front and center. The headline in bold letters read, "Skylink fires 3 staffers after discrimination complaint on private flight." Below it was an official statement. "We deeply regret the events aboard Flight SL 450 yesterday. The crew's actions violated our policies of respect and inclusion. We apologize to Ms. Maya Johnson and her family. Effective immediately, the staff members involved have been dismissed." Skylink pledges additional training and a full policy review. Maya felt her heart surge. She tapped the screen and saw more articles from local newspapers and aviation blogs. One wrote, "High-profile CEO demands accountability. Sparks policy change." Another said, "Airline board to review diversity and inclusion procedures." Comments from readers praised Maya's courage and her father's swift action. Some messages called for even more change in the travel industry. At school that day, Maya's classmates crowded around her locker. She heard whispering and laughter, but not the mean kind. They congratulated her. One friend said, "I saw your story online. You rock." Another handed Maya a small card drawn with clouds and rockets. Inside was a note, "Thanks for standing up for all of us." Maya smiled so wide her cheeks ached. Back at home that evening, Maya's father found her in the garage, inspecting the fins of her next rocket model. He sat beside her and said, "I saw how you handled yourself today. I'm proud." Maya pressed her lips together. "I just wanted to be treated right," she said softly. Her father nodded. "You deserve respect everywhere," he replied. Over the next week, Skylink Airlines held a meeting with its entire staff. Maya watched on the news as airlines executives spoke in front of rows of crew members. The CEO, Alan Pierce, apologized again. Stood in a sharp suit, his head bowed in front of a projector screen. The screen showed slides with titles like "Respect is non-negotiable, and every passenger matters." One slide read, "New training, diversity, equity, and inclusion all crew must complete by month end. Another said revised VIP seating policy, family and charter clients protected. Maya felt a spark of hope. She saw that one small incident had reached far beyond her own experience. A report in the Aviation Journal noted that Skylink's stock price dipped momentarily after the news broke, then rose as investors praised the decisive action. Analysts wrote that the airline's leadership had shown it would not tolerate bios even if it meant losing staff. At home that weekend, Maya and her father invited her science club over for a small celebration. They served homemade lemonade and cupcakes topped with tiny rocket ships made of icing. The room buzzed with laughter and chatter. Maya's clubmates asked about the flight and how she felt. She retold the story with calm clarity. She spoke about her shock, her tears, her call to her father, and the swift consequences. Her friends listened with wide eyes. One girl said, "You changed things for real?" Maya nodded. It felt scary, she admitted, but it felt right. As Maya cleared away the dishes later that evening, her father stood by the sink and said, "You taught us all a lesson. Sometimes the easiest choice is to stay silent, but you spoke up." Maya dried a glass and looked up at him. "I just did what I had to," she said. He walked over and wrapped an arm around her. "You did more than that," he said. "You made sure respect was not optional." Maya felt warmth spread through her chest. She thought of the attendants, now unemployed for a mistake that came. From bias, she felt pity for them, but also knew the price had to be paid. She thought of other people, other girls or boys who might sit in a seat and be forced away. She knew that her choice had made a difference. Later that night, Maya lay in bed and thought about the clouds she had seen from the VIP window. She recalled the soft pink sky, the taste of hot chocolate, and the flash of fear when she had to move. But she also remembered the confidence she felt when her father's call brought justice. She felt tired but happy. She closed her eyes and smiled, thinking of her next rocket launch. Some things she knew would always be beyond her control. But respect was something she could always demand, and if one call had fired a crew and changed an airline's rules, then maybe she could make change again wherever she saw wrong. With that thought, Maya drifted into sleep, dreaming of rockets, bravery, and skies that belonged to everyone. Maya woke early the next morning, feeling a new kind of excitement. Her phone buzzed with messages from friends, teachers, and even people she did not know. Each message said thank you or told her how proud they were. She saw an article from a local news site with her picture and the headline, "Teen stands up to unfair treatment, makes big change." She tapped on it and read how her simple call to her father had led to firings, an apology, and promises of better training for airline staff. Maya smiled. She felt small and large at the same time, small because she was still just a teenage girl, and large because her voice had stretched out into the world. At breakfast, her mother placed a plate of warm waffles in front of her. Her father sat beside her, scrolling on a tablet. When Maya finished the first bite, he looked up and said, "Your story is reaching so many people. I'm proud of you." Maya shrugged and took a sip of orange juice. She said, "I only did what felt right." Her father nodded and set down the tablet. He showed her a message from a woman in another city who said she had shared Maya's story at her daughter's school assembly to teach kids about fairness. Maya felt a flicker of wonder. Her small act on a plane had become a lesson for others. Later, that day, Maya's school held an assembly in the gym. Students filled the seats and whispered with excitement. The principal walked to the front and introduced Maya. Her heart thumped as she stood at the podium. The gym went silent. Maya took a breath and spoke in her soft, clear voice. "I want to thank everyone who has supported me. I believe we each deserve respect, no matter who we are or where we come from." She told them about the flight, how it felt to be asked, to give up her seat, and how it felt to stand up. She ended by saying, "When something is wrong, we must speak up. That's how we change our world." The applause lifted her spirits. Maya scanned the crowd and saw classmates nodding and smiling. She knew her words had reached them in the days that followed. Maya met with people from the airline's customer relations team and human resources. They invited her to share her experience so they could learn what went wrong. She sat at a long table with 3 company representatives. One of them apologized again and said they wanted her advice on how to train staff to treat everyone fairly. Maya spoke about small actions, making eye contact, listening to concerns, and following clear rules that no one could ignore. She suggested they include real stories in their training, so staff would see the person behind each passenger. She felt nervous but proud as they wrote down her ideas. When the meeting ended, the team leader shook her hand and said, "You have helped us become better." Meanwhile, teachers asked Maya to write an article for the school newspaper. She spent an afternoon in the library typing a piece called "Finding My Voice Above the Clouds." She told the story honestly and simply, without blaming anyone for malice. She explained how fear can stop us, but kindness and courage can move mountains. The article ended with a note. "We all have seats in our lives where we deserve to sit. Don't give them up without a fight." When the paper came out, students pinned copies on lockers and shared photos online. Her words spread farther than she imagined. At home, Maya returned to her garage workshop to work on her next rocket. The world outside seemed brighter. She chose new materials, tested new designs, and measured with care. Each time she soldered a part or glued a fin, she thought of fairness and honesty. She wondered if rockets could carry messages as well as people messages of justice and respect. She sketched an idea for a small plaque she might one day attach to a rocket, something like "For all whose voices deserve to rise." She dreamed of launching it into space where it could circle the Earth as a symbol of hope. In the weeks that followed, Skylink Airlines released its official training video. It began with Maya's words displayed on the screen. "Every passenger matters." Then the video showed crew members in training groups, listening, practicing role play, and learning about respect. Maya watched it online and felt a warm rush. She saw people who once misunderstood her now learning to listen. She read comments under the video. "Thank you for teaching us. And I will never ignore a passenger's feeling again." Her simple story had become a tool for change. One afternoon, Maya's father surprised her with tickets to a youth leadership conference in another city. He said it was time for her to share her story on a bigger stage. Maya felt both nerves and excitement. She thought of all the feelings she had on the plane: surprise, fear, sadness, and finally pride. She would speak to hundreds of students and young leaders. She practiced her talk in the mirror. If you see wrong, speak up. If you feel small, remember you still matter. She felt ready. On the day of the conference, Maya stood behind a podium under bright lights. The hall was packed with students from many schools. She told her story honestly, pausing to let her words sink in. She spoke about the clouds outside the plane window, the hot chocolate, and the moment when she dialed her father. She spoke about justice, empathy, and action. When she finished, the hall erupted in applause. Hundreds of hands shot up in the air, asking questions. Maya answered each one with kindness and clarity. She felt a deep joy. This was more than a seat on a plane. It was a voice that could lift others up. That night, Maya lay in bed, thinking of all that had happened. She felt tired but happy. She whispered to herself, "I am not just a passenger. I am someone who can make change." She closed her eyes and dreamed of building bigger rockets, of helping more people, and of a world where every moment was fair. She knew challenges would come, but she also knew that when she spoke with truth and courage, she could help move the world forward, one step at a time.